Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, everyone. On this very chilly fall afternoon, we are so glad to have you join us for this DeKalb County Remembrance Project Leaders, Truth and Reconciliation and Planning a Retreat. We'll hit the purpose and move us forward into our sessions here momentarily, but we wanted to begin with a interfaith and intercommunity prayer. And we have asked Reverend Bob to lead us in that, and he's prepared for that. And so in the spirit of our interfaith operations, this year, last year, the year before, we want to start with that. So Bob, if you would, please share with us.
Certainly. We want to begin the retreat with words of self-reflection that were used by the Coalition to remember the 1906 race massacre as a beginning today. It fits very well, I think, with what we're about. I regard this as more of a meditation than a prayer, but to open our hearts and our minds to remember who we are and what we're all called to do together. So following each of these statements, there will be a pause to reflect. And when the phone rings, just let it go. If you are a praying person, forgive the perpetrators for the sake of the possibility of rehabilitation. If you are a forgiving person, forgive the perpetrators for the sake of the possibility of rehabilitation. If you are a generous person, grant to the bystanders and spectators the possibility of acting with courage and compassion to prevent the next cycle of victims. And if you are a self-loving person, let's work together to ensure that ourselves and our descendants will sustain principled action on behalf of all who share our common humanity. Blessed be.
Thank you, Bob.
Amen. Ashe. Salam and shalom. All right. Excellent. Excellent. So I'm going to begin by sharing our slides here. And can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Again, this is our Leaders, Truth, Reconciliation and Planning mini retreat in virtual form. And of course, if we weren't virtual, we'd probably be somewhere wonderful like the Shambhala Center and hugging each other and eating some food and so forth. So if you have some refreshments with you, by all means, feel free to eat, and we'll give each other virtual hugs. This is our agenda for today, which we are going to try to follow as closely as possible with some flexibilities in between, considering everything that will take place. And I don't need to read it to you, but we basically have two sections. And the first part up until approximately 1:45 will be focused on our reconciliation session with the wonderful Kathy Harmon and Dr. Thee Smith. And then our second session, our second portion will be focused on our mission and determining what the coalition looks like moving forward. Just as a quick word from me, I just want to say that I'm so grateful to be a part of this coalition. I've worked with many community organizations before and many coalitions, and this coalition has been, I probably risk offending other people I've worked with by saying this has probably been my best experience. It has been phenomenal how well this group has worked together. It's been almost flawless. And to that extent, I expect and hope that we can continue this work with the same spirit and model it for other communities in the United States and even internationally. I'd like to start with just a quick video clip from the wonderful documentary that our very own Albert Fields put together. Hopefully you all have had a chance to see this entire video. I think it's about a 40-minute video prior to this. But there's just a 2-minute clip that I wanted to play that captures the reconciliation work that we did at the beginning of this process. And many of us have said that that work at the beginning was greatly responsible for our cohesion and our spirit of unity in working over the last several years. So I'm going to play this for you. There is some talking head, some dude, I don't know why Al put this guy in who's narrating it. So don't pay attention to the narrator, okay? Pay attention to the spirit that was felt in these reconciliation sessions. Okay, can you all see that?
What we did at the beginning of this project was the spiritual glue that held the group together. My area of expertise is community organizing, coalition building. So
Trent, I don't think we're seeing the video.
creating this.
Oh, are we not seeing it?
No.
Okay.
What we're seeing is what convened a 2.5-hour mini retreat, etc.
Okay.
You have
Thank
to share
you.
that. You have to share that particular screen when you show the video.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to stop the initial share and I am going to share again and share the video screen. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
What we did at the beginning
that
of
better?
this project was the spiritual glue that held the group together.
Yes.
My area of expertise is community organizing and coalition building. So the work of creating this, of creating a truth and a reconciliation and a personal sense of restoration and restorative justice amongst the leaders, and therefore amongst their organizations, and therefore in the communities is the critical work. And there are any number of opportunities for individuals to break bonds, to argue, to be offended, to respond to being offended, and to offend again. Dealing with racial matters, particularly in the United States, we're talking trauma. We're talking the results of years and years of racial terrorism. So the first part of the reconciliation process is to exercise the principles of reconciliation with the leaders, with the people who are trying to accomplish something that affects society as a whole. And so we had to begin there. At the beginning, the NAACP was able to bring together a wonderful group of people with good intentions and what was a very clear and unifying mission, and to ensure that that stayed that way and even developed into something longer and more enduring. It was necessary to model amongst us what we were trying to develop and spirit into the rest of our community. The leaders agreed to do 2 sessions, 2 4-hour-long sessions, to gather about 40 people together who were at the core of this mission, at the core of this coalition, who represented 5, 6, 7 different entities, different communities, different racial makeup, different class makeup, to bring them together and to discuss some of the hard issues of culture and imagery and coalition building.
That we all look alike, that we can't swim.
That we are racists, that we are rich, that we are white supremacists.
Out of it came a camaraderie and some tears, a lot of hugs, a lot of personal owning of not just what I may have done or my neighbor may have done to offend you, but what you may have done in response to that offended me. And perhaps most importantly, in the context of this remembrance work, is an ownership for what our ancestors did. The process of acknowledging that and bridging that was the primary outcome of these sessions. But we need to come to grips.
Okay. Great. I hope everybody was able to view all of that. Moving forward, does everybody remember that?
Yep.
Good. Y'all can talk, particularly when I ask questions.
It was wonderful. It was
We
wonderful.
do remember it.
Trent, yes, I do remember it very well.
Good.
Yes.
Good. And the things like that you experience, and sometimes as time goes on, you forget some of the emotions and some of the feelings and successes. So our purpose today, we determined to have this retreat, and we want to accomplish 2 things, which I've alluded to earlier. To have our super condensed reconciliation session, and our deliverable out of that, or our objective and goal. If nothing else, there are many things that will hopefully come from it. But if nothing else, we want to strengthen the bonds of this group for the work ahead. And so we'll have an evaluation, if not immediately afterwards, within the next day or so, where you all will be able to actually determine if you feel that has taken place and what other things you feel may have taken place today. And the second part, again, is to achieve mission clarity and to identify some strategic projects moving forward. Okay, and with that being said, I just want to some housekeeping. The bathrooms are in the back. So if you feel the need, just go through that back door back there, and the bathrooms are there. We do have some visitors. I've invited Dr. Doug Pratt, who is done most of his work with the FCRC, but he was at the reconciliation sessions at the beginning. And so he is, I've invited him to join us because his voice is very important in this overall work. Also, a little bit later, joining us will be a representative or two working with the Carter Center, who is, the Carter Center is looking to see how they can partner with organizations like DCRP and the Fulton County Organization and others to help us accomplish our goals in the community. And is Al here? Mr. Al Chapman, are you here?
Yes, I'm tuned in. Sure am. Thank
Good.
you.
Let's give Al a hand. Al is re-retiring, but I was able to have him to come out of re-retirement for this meeting because I felt his voice would be very important and critical in talking about moving forward. And then we'll let you re-retire
All right.
after
Thank you very much.
after this meeting. And I've also invited, I don't think she'll have a chance to attend, Ms. Jill Savitt, who is the director of the National Center for Civil and Human Rights, who has shown a lot of work and expressed interest in the work of this coalition and other coalitions around the greater Atlanta area. Okay, so with that being said, I think the last technical piece is you all feel free to use the chat if you need to interact in any way, but also realize that everything except the breakout rooms are being recorded. And unless anyone has any major objections to that, we definitely wanted this to be a part of the coalition history, and perhaps even, you know, just a part of the coalition history and legacy. And the chats will also be used to place the questions that will go into the breakout rooms. So just be aware, you don't want to chat or don't want to say anything that you don't want to be on the evening news. Not that we plan to do that, but you know, that's a good standard. I'm not gonna say anything that I wouldn't want to be on the evening news. But the breakout sessions will not be recorded. So you may feel a little more freedom to share your thoughts and personal feelings, etc. Okay, so unless anyone has any more questions, I'd like to introduce our reconciliation facilitators for today. And those of you who attended the sessions at the beginning, you know very well Cappy Harmon and Dr. Thee Smith. And so I almost feel I don't need to do an introduction, but I'll just say a few things that very notably, Cappy was the director of the National Coalition Building Institute here in Atlanta. And so she has worked for over 23 years at Eastman Kodak, and she has worked in the corporate sector and then the nonprofit sector since then. And she has worked tirelessly in the community and is a master trainer, if you will, in matters of reconciliation and diversity and team development. And is also a member of St. Luke's Episcopal Church here in the city. So she is a quote unquote local, and so has a personal affiliation with the needs and concerns of this community. And Dr. Thee Smith, of course, aside from being the founder and chairman of of the board for Southern Truth and Reconciliation is a retired professor of religion from Emory University, who is also a master trainer from the National Institute, National Coalition Building Institute, and has dedicated his life to this type of work and this type of training, and is at the core now of consideration of actually developing a Truth and Reconciliation Commission here in the South, and possibly even in the greater Atlanta area. So we'll look for more from that. So without further ado, I am going to hand the mic over to the NAACP.
Thank you, Trent.
Yes.
All right. So good to see many of you again that I saw. So Cappy and I did work with you all back in August of 2019, preceding the pandemic, when we could see each other in person and live. We were at the Shambhala Center for some of our workshops, and we did workshops also with the Fulton County Coalition and different venues at Emory and so on. Letitia, thanks for hosting some of that work at Emory. Bob and I have connected around activism at the King Center. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. And
Yes.
and so it's so good to be back with you doing this kind of work. And Cappy will introduce herself a little bit later, but we like to use the broad category why we do this work. And just to let you know briefly, I was a graduate student in the 1980s on the West Coast, where I was doing liberation theology, and discovered liberation workshops that involved people caring about each other as they did diversity training work, and not using guilt, blame, or shame, but in fact cooperating and assisting each other in discovering where we had prejudices and biases that get in the way of our being in solidarity with one another. So that's back in the 80s. It's been quite a while that I've been doing this work, and that's why I continue to still do it, because it was like good news from a far land that people could do this work cooperatively, collaboratively, openly admitting where we're challenged around being in solidarity with one another and giving each other a hand in doing the healing and restorative work in recovering our connections. So I've got a little screen share coming up as well. Let's see if I can do that briefly.
We'd love for you all to show your faces if you could. Not necessary, but y'all are such beautiful people. That would be wonderful.
Okay. So I'm sorry I didn't follow that, Trent. Showing faces. Can you see my slideshow already?
Yeah, we can see your face, your slideshow. I'm not sure what I would have to do to show all our faces. I guess it would be in a column on the right-hand side of the screen.
Oh, gallery side view, yes. Gallery side view, and you may have to scroll through the gallery side view to see other people who aren't in that particular column.
Mm-hmm.
You may have to slide up and down the column. So we are, Cappy and I and Trent, connect with each other through Southern Truth and Reconciliation, or STAR. We have various workshop resources that we're pleased to share with you today. Let's see. And we like to think of ourselves as providing reconciliation initiatives for restorative communities. And the DeKalb County Remembrance Project and the NAACP DeKalb are all examples of restorative communities, communities that are engaged in restoring our solidarity with one another. We've also, as Trent helpfully mentioned, we've done training over the years with the National Coalition Building Institute in Silver Spring, Maryland. It's headed by Sherry Brown, a very powerful Jewish woman who does great diversity training work, prejudice reduction. She's got 2 publications that we draw on frequently, Cappy and I, Healing into Action and Principles into Practice. Those are great terms and categories that profile what we're about here. One quote from Healing into Action is the acknowledgement that we all carry records or recordings about other groups that prevent us from building effective alliances. But we can develop sound policies on controversial issues when we understand the deep concerns on all sides. So despite the fact that we have things in our heads and in our lives that prevent us from building effective alliances, we can overcome that by understanding deep concerns on all sides. Now, to set that up in terms of going from that theory to actual practices, we're going to lay a groundwork for that. Namely, we're going to be listening to one another as a powerful tool to reduce and resolve conflict, noticing that the hidden word inside listen is silent. So we'll take turns keeping silence. I like to say you all are doing a remarkable job of that already, giving each other opportunity to take turns as we listen to one another. But listening does not mean that we agree with what is said, condone a person's actions, compromise what we believe. Instead, listening gives us opportunities to allow each other time to respect one another. Sorry, let's see if I can get my screen to continue to work here. Oops, my screen just froze. Here we go. To show strength and courage to care about one another. It can actually be a kind of act of courage and fortitude to sustain caring about one another even during controversies or challenges, because we're willing to make a difference in the world and in our lives with one another. So we have a set of ground rules that make this kind of work go better by keeping confidentiality, which means whatever we share about what happens here, to ask a person's permission before we share it with anyone else, to check in with them. Can I share what I heard you say? Or if you associate a person's name, one way to keep confidentiality is not to associate a person's name with what was said without checking in with them first and asking permission. Practicing civility. We've got a lot of energy in culture nowadays and culture wars where civility has been hard to sustain, and we dedicate ourselves to model doing that here. Stretching our safety zone in places where we might feel vulnerable and need to go beyond our safety zone in order to share something. We encourage you to do that. And then to cooperate with facilitators, trusting in the process. Now, Trent has already suggested that what we're about here will connect with the purpose of the DeKalb County Remembrance Project and NAACP DeKalb, especially in your recent connection and work with EJI, the Equal Justice Initiative out of Montgomery, Alabama. On the EJI website, it describes collaborating with communities to memorialize documented victims of racial violence and to foster meaningful dialogue about race and justice. And back in 2019, when we began this work, the EJI website described an additional piece here that coalitions interested in a longer-term level of engagement around truth and reconciliation might seek an incremental process that engages additional steps after placing markers, historical markers, at the sites of lynchings and racial violence incidents. So I want to applaud all of us assembled here today for taking on a longer term view and resourcing each other for sustaining a longer view after marker placement processes have been completed. EJI anticipated that, and I'm delighted that we're following through on that, even though we're still also engaged in continuing to place historical markers. And then finally, in terms of purpose statements, back in September of 2019 at the Interfaith Service Journey of Remembrance and Reconciliation, it was acknowledged that the purpose of such events as we're engaged in is to call us, one and all, to face our fractured paths and to dedicate ourselves to building a path toward healing and wholeness. So what we'll be doing today in a caucus format as Cappy will introduce momentarily, involves facing our fractured past. It is actually looking at the fracture points that pit us against one another, that divide us, that make it difficult to sustain alliances and coalitions. Actually facing into that history in a way that a lot of folks and fellow citizens, sister citizens around our nation find it hard to do and forbidding and resist doing that. But we're going to actually take it on. That's one way our work today will connect with purpose statements that your coalition has already stated. Because the goal here, as it says in the second bullet, is to stand as a unified people, part of a global community, recognizing we're all children of God, filled with compassion, hope, and the desire to bring an end to violence and hate as we dedicate ourselves to work toward repair and reparation. So we're going to do both, face the fractured past, but also aim for these goals of solidarity as a unified people. That's the purpose. Cappy, ready for you.
Great, thank you so much, Steve. And I am actually going to encourage all of you, I would love to see everybody's face. There may be a reason, and there really is a reason, but if it's just, I'm not sure what, you haven't figured out how to turn your video on, please turn it on. It's important when we're doing coalition building work that we actually can see each other. So that would be lovely. And while you're all doing that, I'm going to just share a little bit, 2 sentences about why I do this work. I'm a preacher's kid, some of you may be, and I grew up in the 50s and 60s in a very diverse, multiracial church community, and which I will be eternally grateful for. And it was in Roxbury, Massachusetts, and there was lots of discussion and conversation in my home growing up about racism, and we had Christian-Jewish dialogue in the living room, and, the rectory, and so there was my family, fortunately for me, I feel, was just very engaged in activism. We all went to the March on Washington in our VW bus, with through 100 people in the bus, it seemed like, and so I always. I shouldn't say always, I had an understanding at a young age about racism. I certainly got information that was true and misinformation, just like everybody else. But because I also had lots of different people in my life, I very early on also had African-American people in my life as elders. So, not just white people as elders. So I learned, you respected your elders. So I had a different connection I learned later on than a lot of white people that I've come to know later in life. And so I just learned really early how important it was and how deeply racism hurts all of us. And so that's one of the reasons I do this work. So, it's great to see so many more of you. So what I'm going to do right now, we are going to do an activity with you. It's called caucuses or breakout groups. We're going to, and not right this minute, but at some point, Albert's going to put us into 2 different caucus groups. And what we're going to do is we're going to answer some questions being in these caucus groups. And those of you who have done a workshop with Thea and I before, you may have done this activity before, so that's great. You get to do it again. I'm always surprised when I do the same activity multiple times. You often come up with different things, so it still is a good opportunity for you. We're going to be, and this is just because of time. If we were spending the whole day with each other, we would do multiple groups, but just because of time today, you're going to choose which of these 2 groups you're going to participate in, and you have to be a member of the group. And the 2 groups are, you're either going to be in a people of the global majority or indigenous people, sometimes we say people of color group, or white European heritage group. Now, I realize, having said that some of you might be members of both of those groups. Here's what I would suggest. If you are, the way I like to think of it, let's think of somebody who's a very visible person, President Obama, right? He's a member. He could choose either of those groups. What I would suggest to you is to say, if that's true for you, how do you experience the world? we would all probably say President Obama experiences the world as a black man. Most people looking at him would say, oh, he's a black man. That's how he experiences the world, even though clearly he's biracial, and actually, or multiracial. A lot of people are biracial and multiracial. But that's just to help you decide which group you're going to be a part of today. So just by show of hands, how many people would be in the people of the global majority or people of color group today? Just put your hand up if that's the group you're going to be in today. Great. Okay. And how many people are going to choose the white European heritage group today? Just by show of hands. Great. So we've got a nice mix, which is great. Okay. And everybody can see themselves in one of those two groups, right? Okay, good. Because it's important that you be a member of the group that you're going to answer these questions about. What we're going to do in the groups is probably going to be about maybe 14 or 15 minutes. When you get into the group, you're going to choose, or let me say this another way. Somebody needs to volunteer to be a recorder, and the recorder means you're going to write down what people say. So just be thinking, it would be great if all of you said, no, me, I want to be the recorder. We want you to figure that out really quickly. Don't spend a lot of time on it, okay? And please don't volunteer each other. That's not, just because so-and-so always does it, they may not want to do it today, right? So you're going to choose a recorder in the group, or the recorder is going to self-select. And then I'm also going to suggest that you have somebody also in the group who's going to be a timer. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. We're going to give you 4 questions you're going to answer. You're not going to have to write them down. We're going to put them in the chat, and they will follow you into the breakout room. If there's 4 questions and you're in the breakout room for, let's say, 14 minutes, the timer could use their phone, for example, to just help you not get so engaged in the first question that you missed the last, 3 questions. So the timer could just say time, let's go to question 2. Okay, so you're going to have 2 volunteers in the group, a recorder and a timer. The recorder is also the person who's going to then report back to the big group when we come back to the big group. And the other job of the recorder is to write down what people say in response to the questions without editing them. We're not going to be editing what people say. I'm not going to say, oh, I don't agree with you. I could think that, but I'm not going to be editing if somebody says, put this on the list, it goes on the list. Okay? Let's see. I think that's all the notes that I have at the moment. I'm going to very, very quickly, because Thea's putting this into the chat. I'm very quickly going to tell you just say what the questions are so you can get a first sort of thought about them. They will also be in the chat, so you don't have to write them down unless you want to. But question number 1 is, what's been great about belonging to your group? And we're talking about the group you're in. So either the people of the global majority group or the white people group. What's been great about that? Okay. And again, the recorder is just going to write down what people say. The second question is, what's been hard or difficult or challenging about being a member of that group? That's the second question. The third question is, what should people never again say, think, or do about your group? So if you're in the people of the global majority, you want to write down, what do I want people never to say, think, or do about people of the global majority? And then the fourth question is going to be, and what must my allies know or do? Is there something different my allies, or something I want my allies to know? Okay. Any quick questions before we move on? And then I'm going to ask Al, and Al's going to explain to you. You're going to actually get to choose the group, and he's going to explain to you in about a minute how to do that. Any questions about what you're going to do in the group?
I have a question, Cappy.
Yes.
We're talking about our life in general, correct? Not our experience within this coalition.
That's a great question. I would say it could be your experience in the coalition, but it could also just be your experience in the world, because we've all got a lot of lived experience. So yeah, but I wouldn't contain it just to the coalition. because we have a bigger life experience. Yeah. Any other quick questions or thoughts? Okay, Al, would you like to just tell, I was going to say tell people what to do. Would you like to give instructions?
Okay, so I am going to open the 2 rooms and you will have a choice. You choose whichever area you want to go into. Now I've just opened them. If you run your cursor across your screen, you should get your ribbon across the screen, either at the top or the bottom, and that will allow you to see the participants, see chat screens and the like. Along that, you should also see a note that says breakout room. Once you click on that breakout room, then you'll have a choice. It will give you 2 choices. You decide whether or not you want to go into room 1, which is the global majority, or you go to room 2, which is the non-global majority. Okay, so those are the choices. Does everybody see their panel that tells them that they can mute security, participants, chat, and the like? Do you see that?
At the bottom of most of our screens? You mean?
Some will be at the bottom, some will be at the top. It depends on what kind of device you're using.
Could you say again, what is the definition of global majority?
People of the global majority are people of color, Black people, Asian people, Latino
Okay,
people.
thank
Yes.
you.
Because in fact, they're the people of the global majority.
So have you guys seen the panel and it says breakout room?
Yeah, I can't figure out how to get into the room.
Yes, and when you go there, it disconnects you from the group. So yes.
Yes, it's going to disconnect you from this group, but you're going to go
Yes.
into the breakout room,
Yeah,
so
right.
that
Yes, certainly
whichever
does.
room you choose. Michael.
So,
okay,
Right,
people
so
are now starting to go into the room.
Yes,
Michael.
and you can see that, I can see that some people have joined the group. Okay.
should I go ahead and post the chat questions?
Yes, please do, Thee.
I can't figure out how to get in.
Okay, Michael.
I
Michael.
can't either.
Okay,
Oh, breakout rooms. I
Yes,
see.
breakout rooms. Yes.
Okay, say join.
Click on breakout room and join, and then
Join.
you decide which room you want to go to. How about you, Michael? Do you see when you put your cursor on
I
your
see it.
screen?
I see it now. Okay.
Yeah, so each of you now needs to go to that room. I will also broadcast a general message when it's time to close that. I'll give you a 60-second notice when it's time to close that room.
Yeah.
Okay, folks are starting to come back.
Yes, they are
I
starting
can
to
open
come
all the rooms willy-nilly, should I?
Okay, it's going to
great.
close. It's going to close down and bring them back anyway.
Great, okay.
It
All right, welcome back.
brought us
Here we
back.
are.
Okay, great.
All right, we gave you a little extra time and we hope that was useful. And so I want to appreciate folks lending themselves to this process, letting yourself look at some unpleasant as well as some celebratory aspects of our identities. And so let's just hear from the reporters, the 2 reporters, without interruption. And if the group says something humorous, make sure you're laughing with the group and not at the group. So let's hear from our reporters, beginning with the Global Majority Group. Where are you, Global Majority reporter? Who is that?
I was the recorder, but I guess that means I'm the reporter too. I wasn't sure. Okay, what's so great about being a member of this group of the global community? The richness of our art and creativity, our ability to problem solve, our sense of family, our the hardworking community, our ethic of hard work, our desire to do better and be better, our diversity, the confidence that comes from what we have endured, and our resilience and our spirituality and spiritual awareness.
All right, great list. And let's go on to question number 2. What's been hard, difficult, or challenging? That's been great. What's been hard, difficult, or challenging?
Literally facing racism, the unfairness of the disparities we endure, being in spaces where we are invisible, seeing laws and our Constitution and the laws ignored or neglected, pitted against our own people, being the last hired, the first fired.
Thank you. Keep going, please, and you can restate the question.
Okay,
if
the
you've
third
got it.
question, what should never again be said about this group? That we're lazy
Mm.
and we don't want to work, that we are not honest, that we are unclean, that we are emotionalists, that the N-word is a term of endearment, that we believe that and see that. We don't believe that and see that. That we should get over it. This was posed as a question. Why is she, they in charge? That we are never qualified for whatever, jobs, positions, benefits, whatever, we're not deserving. That we don't see, was another question. We don't like hearing from people that they don't see color because they have to see us, and they should see us in all our different hues. Some of my best friends are members of this group. We don't ever want to hear that. That we are monolithic, that we are all the same. We feel we are not. We represent, there are many subcultures within this group of people. Do not discriminate against us. Do not discriminate against me. Do not underestimate me. Do not underestimate my abilities. And then the fourth question was, what must our allies know or do to support us? I guess I didn't see the full question, but I think that's the gist of it. And so basically we said all of the things above, all the things that we expressed in response to questions 1, 2, and 3, that we think it would be good for our allies to know and to act from. And in addition to that, that we want our allies to know that they should not use deception for in order to use us for their political gains. I think that's what, people jump in and correct me, but I was writing quickly here. The other is that everything that was said, I said that in response to questions 1 through 3. We want what every other American wants: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our allies should be educated on our issues and what is important to us, and to be effective as an ally. They've got to know where we stand, what matters to us, not what matters to them. And then lastly, that if our allies would just obey the golden rule, to look at the golden rule and do to us what they would want others to, treat us in the ways that they would want others to treat them.
Thank you. Are there any other additions from that group? Anything that didn't get recorded or could be elaborated a bit? Yes, I too appreciate your doing that with us and for us, Rosalind.
Thank you.
Let's appreciate the group, all of us together. Thank you. Now, from the group of European heritage folks who identify as white or European heritage of any particular homeland, who's your recorder?
Sean, and I apologize. I announced this in the small group, but my screen says Bob because of my login I could not access, and Bob signed me in. But my name is Sean Griffin.
Welcome, Sean.
And before I start, I want to, as Rosalind mentioned, we were writing fast and trying to listen hard. And so if I make an error, group members correct me if I misquote you. So in answer to number 1, we variously had a lot of agreement on this first statement, which was that things that might be thought of as a plus are also a detriment. And an example of that would be being comfortable in the culture can also lead you to complacency. And so everything that was stated could be a drawback. There was a lot of agreement on white male privilege and not even being able to list the benefits of that. That although it's not exclusively available to whites in our culture, there is a huge level of comfort in being encouraged to always follow curiosity, be able to travel freely, ask questions, and have a sense of freedom that's not true for people of color. And the sense of being supported by the structures that are in place that look very much like you. And it's a thing that you aren't even aware of, but it supports you until you become more aware of it. Number two, Dee, would you remind me what that question was?
What's been hard, difficult, or
What's been
challenging
hard?
about being a member of this
Okay,
group?
a huge challenge is how difficult it is to realize how much damage that white ascendancy or white supremacy has done in the United States and all over the world. Having one's eyes open to that, it's very painful. Continually not being aware of how I am being white and having to pull myself up and realize how I am assuming things because I'm white. How white culture has prevented me from learning about racism, other cultures, and kept me from understanding the truth. How it's hard to stop and overcome those assumptions and actually think about how others want to be treated and should be treated and what they don't have. Learning how to shut up and listen to people of color. Number three, what do you never want people to say about your group? That all white people are white supremacists, which is hard to say. Someone else chimed in because we sort of are, even though we don't intend to be, because we have the privilege of the white supremacy that's embedded in the culture. Globally, that our entire group doesn't care. We may care and not know what to do about it, and assuming that nobody cares, that people are unable to change, that there's no potential for progress in the white community. We don't want people to say that there is always going to be racism in the white community and no effort to work, that we not all be lumped together and seen as a monolith. Number four, what we want our allies to know or do. I think we struggled more with the do than the know a little bit. And anybody in the group, after I'm finished, please chime in if I left something out or misquoted you. We want our allies to know that we're open to discussion always. We may be afraid or feel rebuffed initially at what you're saying or pointing out, but we're willing to sit there and be uncomfortable and talk it through or learn. But we don't want you to be able to think that we expect you to teach us everything. Let's see, it's that we know that it's okay for you to need time away from white people in white spaces and need separate spaces for your own well-being and to process what's going on. That we do bear most of the responsibility for teaching history, culture, and appreciation of difference. It's not your community's job to do that. And a subtle point that was brought up about the reparations discussion, that we want to hear what the solutions are that the BIPOC community wants on reparations instead of us saying what we want to do. We want our allies to know that whites are in process. We're all learning. It's a learning curve, and that our allies be able to say about us that we're not seeking a colorblind society, but an embracing of differences and seeing the individuals next to us. That we don't want to police well-deserved feelings of frustration among you, our allies, with our either ignorance or stupidity or slowness or whatever. Please be patient with us, we're trying. That's it.
Thank you, Sean. And Sean, thank you also for inviting other additions from the group. Are there any other additions or clarifications from the group? I'll repost the 4 questions. Very good.
And while
Let's appreciate the group for sharing what it for sharing the responses to these 4 questions. Thank you.
I just want to say we've been joined by one of the guests that I mentioned earlier, Alexi. Welcome, Alexi. I told him he could just kind of sneak in, open the door, and stand in the back of the room. But I just definitely want to welcome him, and I guess he can kind of put 2 and 2 together as to what's happening and what's going on. You might, I don't know if you want to kind of let them know where we are, but I just want to acknowledge your joining us.
Thank you, Trent. Yes, welcome, Alexei. You're joining us from Freedom Road, an organization that's committed to the human rights struggle and solidarity with around issues of diversity and reconciliation and restorative justice. Thank you for that. And yes, the 4 questions have been vetted and responded to. And now we're going to just process. Cappy will lead us in a way to process our responses to these 4 questions, and in a way that will invite us to think about what are some next steps. Where do we go from here?
Great. Thank you for all of that, and great recording and timekeeping, I'm imagining. So this is for anybody. These questions, what were some common themes? Did you hear any common themes in the report outs? In terms of what people liked or, yes, Sue.
I thought it was interesting that both groups, the issue of being monoliths, that nobody wants to be a monolith, part of this one solid thing.
Right. Thank you.
Or stereotyped.
Or stereotyped, right? Other common themes, anybody? What people liked, what they didn't like, what they never want people to say again, think or do.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, Shelby, we can
Yes.
hear you now. Yes.
All right, thank you. I'll say that the group I belong to said something, and I did hear it in the European group, base group rather, and that is exactly what I would like. I'm glad that we have these few people who really believe in those things, because you said some of the things that I really was looking to hear, even though it's very few of you here, but how you convey that to the community and United States and the world,
Great. Thank you, Shelby.
Okay.
Anyone else hear any kind of common themes? Well, I'll ask the next question, but if something else does pop up, please feel free to share it. The next question is, was there, sort of a 2-part question, was there something that particularly touched you, maybe touched your heart, and or was there some new information?
So I'll say,
yes,
for me, I thought Rosalind's report was very interesting for her group, and it seemed like they were much more specific answers to the questions, perhaps, than our other group that I was a part of.
Okay.
I'd like to say something. I felt that too. And after the reports, my thought was, well, why is that? Because that's just how my mind works. Why would that be that ours would be more specific? And I think it's because it shows the dominance. If you have been a member of a dominant group, or a group that had supremacy applied to you, or maybe you even you took that on your, you accepted that role of supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, you don't have those persons. It shows a different power dynamic, I think, is why you see that, is because the people who are in power, who are dominant, they just don't have those same issues. I hate to sound trite, but yeah, I hope y'all get what I'm trying to say. I know it was all messed up, but anyway.
No, it's very clear. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? And please just unmute during this time if there's something you want to add. Maybe new information or something that touched you, or
And I wanted to
go ahead, Doug, and then Sean.
say that
You're breaking up a little bit, Doug. Repeat, please.
I think he's frozen. Okay, Doug, you broke up and then, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Let me know if this comes across, but Thomas said something that I had never actually considered, and I don't know why, but when he said, look, for the white groups to come up with suggestions for reparations is kind of putting it backwards. No, that the white allies need to be asking the other groups of color, historically victimized groups, disenfranchised, what would be amends that would be satisfying to you? Teach us what you want and what you need. And, you know, as a principal, that's how I and we, I think, would all like to work. But it just never dawned on me in terms of reparations. So I think that was a real important contribution, at least for me.
For you, great, new information, great, new way of thinking, great. And Sean, I think you had your hand up earlier.
Yes, it does. It doesn't follow from the two prior points, so I apologize for that. But it just, I think one of the things that I keep in mind when sometimes in my own community, I'm challenged by people for why are you saying that, or why are you doing that? And one of the things that motivates me to keep showing up and to try in my own very tiny way to keep challenging things is this feeling that white people cause this problem. So we have to be part of fixing it, no matter how uncomfortable it is for us, because that's really irrelevant.
Right.
I don't know, that's sort of a very small point, but it is something I keep in mind.
That's a big point.
Major.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that ties into also it was mentioned, it's been addressed, is in the global majority group, one of the things that they said that we said that we didn't want to hear, and it also carried over into an understanding that we want our allies to have, is related to get over it, is, well, you know, my ancestors did that. You know, that was my great grandfather. I'm not responsible for that. So kind of get over it, or what have you. But related to that is what you just said, Sean, that and what has been said is that it's generational, and we're raised in our cultural understanding and expectation. So we're still white people as far as supremacy, and Black folk as far as inferiority. We carry that from generation to generation, and so it still continues. And that's even a way of addressing those who say, well, that was then, this is now.
The perpetuation of it. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. And just because of time, any last comments? Yes, Al. Where'd he go? Oops. Oh, no.
He had to go to a meeting, he said.
Oh, he had to go to a meeting. Thank you. Okay, I thought he was raising his hand. Okay, well, that's right. He had told us earlier. Any last comments? Again, just because of time. Obviously, this is very juicy and we could talk about it and share a lot longer. And you all obviously get to do that with each other. Any last thoughts or comments?
I just want to make an observation.
Mm-hmm.
Someone stated that when we, the BIPOC, when we stated our questions, the answers to our questions, they were very clear and they were very concise. But yet when we get into the big room and I don't know, for me, for some reason, it's like, okay, when we're together, we're very clear on what it is that we want the white community to know about us. We're very clear about what we want to say and what we want to tell you and what we expect from you. But then when we have this opportunity where you all are present and then we're present to convey that list of things that we want, it's almost as if, you know, I don't think we're uncomfortable. Probably that is the word, uncomfortable with sharing it verbally. It's good to list it on paper and put it in a document and tell you this is what we want, but to communicate that personally, face to face, I think sometimes that's a barrier, that's a problem to do it face to face. You know what I'm saying?
I can understand that.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I were in that position, I would suddenly find myself unwilling to expose my neediness.
Well, there is some vulnerability there.
Yeah.
That I would personally feel, you know, because in my group, I was able to say, I want XYZ. I want the white community to know XYZ. And then when I'm in front of you, because, you know, because of history, you know, and I get in front of you, I'm not that comfortable. I don't want to be that transparent. I don't want to have that vulnerability. I am uncomfortable with that vulnerability. So therefore, I'd rather just read this list and you can just take and do with it whatever you want.
Yes.
But to just verbally communicate it, because then I'm going to have to, you know, once I put myself out there, I'm going to have to be responsible for it. You know, well, explain that, give me some more information. Tell me, what would that look like? You know, how would we do that? Then I'd have to come up with some, you know, the conversation won't just stop right there. Right. It has to be some more dialogue that I may not be prepared for.
Exactly.
You know? So that's just an observation that I wanted to
make.
And
it's the same thing on the other direction. We find ourselves, oh my God, now what have I not known? I don't know what it is I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take a risk here and jump in, and Thea and Cappy may be bringing this around. Is there anything along that regard that any of the African Americans in this group feel that they need to say as it pertains to working with the DeKalb County Remembrance Project, or anything that white Americans in this group feel that they need to say as it pertains to working within this group with each other? Things that perhaps have been said or unsaid, with the idea and the concept of we are wanting to go forward stronger. And it's a whole nother session that Thea and Cappy do on the unspoken biases and things that are the recordings. Thea does a wonderful session on the recordings that are going on that come out and they play a role even when we're not saying it. And I'd be the first to say, as I started off the beginning, it looks like this is just a perfect group. And I think in so many ways it has been. But is this an opportunity to operate in that frankness and operate in that transparency to lay that foundation further going forward?
Hello. Can I say something, Trent?
Yes, ma'am.
I thought I heard something in one of my own group from Freedom, that she mentioned that you said something, we were saying something out of a group, and when you came face to face, First of all, we're not really face to face, and I like to be face to face with people. I did say that one of the people said that I heard someone say that don't say this, that was my ancestor. Yes, I heard that many times, and then I hear it again because we're in the group, we're white and black, the saying don't, that we're afraid to say, and I take that very strongly. We're in the same group, but that was not a statement she should have said, because I feel that she's using her degree, her doctor degree, and her job. Don't say me, because nobody knows what I went through with the other race. And I'm not afraid to say it, but I left it there because I felt that everyone else wanted to say something. Now, I like to talk to people, white and black, and I have worked, but don't say that. There are many people who in your own race who try to keep you from saying things and then try to make you look silly. But I am not silly, and I felt stung by that, what she said, and we're supposed to be reconciliation here, and then she said to other people, but not to me. And I'm sorry she feel that way, but don't use your degree here when all of us done had the opportunity to get a degree. I do have a degree, but not the type she had. And that was an insult. And one thing we should learn right now, while we got the white folks and the blacks here on the line, we need to stop at each other, but we can deal with our allies. If we stop doing that, making fun of each other and talking about each other, don't use the big word. Let's get down to the really grit. And I mean it.
Okay, I want to comment. I think I've been absent in a lot because I'll be honest with you. I've been working with this group for the last couple of years. I missed some meetings, missed some gatherings, but I have not experienced some of what I'm hearing. I will say this. Earlier, a few minutes ago, I was thinking about the difference in the two groups when Frida spoke about we were very specific, but in our breakout group, but then coming together, maybe we didn't, we weren't reiterating what we really needed. I didn't feel the sense to reiterate it because in my working with the people, both black and white on this project, I have felt a sense of delight and harmony. I felt like finally I found some white people that I could be honest with. I'll be honest with you. Where you people are, where the white people are that I have worked with, and I work very closely with Sean, and now with Tom to a certain extent. I've had more conversations with him. With Sue Gilman, I've had some conversations. But it's not been an everyday. We're not bosom buddies, but it's been so different from other white people that I have known through my education and through my career. And at least I found people who were willing to come and work. I don't find people outside this group who are willing to come and work on these issues. I don't find people who are willing to acknowledge the harm that I've suffered. The hate. I went back to try to have conversation because this is my 50th year high school reunion, and I went back on Facebook to try to have conversation with some of my former classmates it was a predominantly white school. There were only 16 black kids in the whole school, just to kind of see where their minds were now. I was shocked. It seemed they were worse than when they were 50 years ago. I went, oh my God. I wanted to have these conversations to see the growth. To see how there was no growth, there was regression in how they felt about Black-white issues. So I want to applaud this group for coming together, and I don't know about these slights and things that have happened because personally, they haven't happened to me. Now, some of you probably come to know me. I mean, I'll talk too much and I try to hold back. But I'm not afraid of anybody, male, female, whatever country, wherever you come from. I will stand toe to toe with you. If I feel like you offend me, you step in my space. If you do something and you don't even know it, I will let you know in a very polite way. If you get ugly, then I go there too. That's who I am. All right. So but like I say, I welcome the fact that I have worked with people who have been very polite to me, who have listened. I've not had these slights. And I'm not one to want to be in an echo chamber. I welcome having people because that's how you learn. So with that, I have to leave in a few minutes. This has been wonderful. I wish we could continue it more, and I'm sorry I have to leave because, but I will in a few minutes.
Well, that's probably a
Thank you,
great seg.
Rosalind.
So I would like to, I think perhaps my comment was misconstrued, but so let me just say that I was not talking about this group. I was talking about just being an African American, stating a concern of an African American. I just use that group as the analogy. Me as an African American, if I wanted to state my concern, what it was that I needed, what was it that I wanted from another group, I would be comfortable in stating that in a group of my peers, my other African American people. But when I had to bring that delivery into another group that was not of African American, there would be some trepidation there. There would be some hesitancy there. I'm not talking about this group in particular. So I have offended some people, and I do apologize for that. That was not the intent.
Thank you for clarifying.
I was talking about,
yes.
Yes, I was talking about the uncomfortableness of having to say that in another group setting.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Well, that's probably a great segue, because what Cappy and I are committed to provide with STAR going forward, and with Trent's leadership as a coalition builder, are other opportunities, other resources for going to the next level. And so one way to do that in terms of closing out what we've done here today is to ask everyone to just share one sentence. What are you willing to commit to going forward as an ally based on what's happened here today? And we'll just go around the circle. I can call on people. What are you ready to commit to, having heard what we've said and shared today as an ally? And it may be this point of courage that Frida has highlighted for us, or encouragement, or fortitude, transparency, etc. This will go faster, by the way, if we limit it to one word, but a word or phrase, at most a sentence, going around the circle. And on my screen, I'm seeing to the right of Cappy, Suzanne McQuaid. Is that what you're seeing, everyone? Let's just go around the circle.
Right.
One word, one phrase, one sentence commitments as allies going forward. Suzanne, you can unmute. Okay, we'll go on to Bob.
My commitment is to keep working on myself and keep working together.
Thank you. Letitia?
Listening and helping to equip other white people for this kind of work.
Thank you. You can say your name as we're going through. I won't have to repeat it. Go ahead, Bert.
Yeah, to listen to what I can do to move reparations forward.
Michael?
I would say calling out racism wherever I find it.
Thank you. Annabeth?
It's Annabeth. Trying to stay aware of what I do and how it impacts other people. Be more respectful.
Thank you. Trent?
I would say to do everything that I can to try to recreate these type of opportunities.
Right on. On to D. There you go. Let's see.
One word, reconciliation.
All right. Thank you.
LB Hall, I would like to deal with more social conscious people. I'm willing to go halfway.
Thank you. Doug?
I'd like to broaden the way that I show respect and patient listening. I need to expand it.
Thank you. Carolyn or Caroline? We'll come back if you're still getting to the screen. On to Sean.
A sentence, please. Sean Griffin, to daily commit to having the courage and openness to work for reconciliation in this country.
Thank you. Suzanne, we'll get back to you in a moment, but we're going on to Sue.
Lifelong learning and action, and a commitment to this group.
Thank you. Frida.
This is Frida. I'm committed to listening and learning.
Rosalind.
Oh, I want to commit to always act from a space of honesty and authenticity.
Thank you. And Thomas.
So my big deal is to try to be patient. I'm often impatient in trying to get things done.
All right. And back to Suzanne. Hi.
Hi. Well, I'm new to this, so I think a first step for me is going to be acknowledging my responsibility in reconciliation.
All right. Is that everyone?
Carolyn.
Oh, there you are, Carolyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say,
I'm sorry. I pushed the wrong button. Please unmute again, Carolyn. And
just
say-
wanted to say that the road is long and hard, but we're here on it together.
Yeah.
I'd like to say before we move on, a thank you to Caroline for all of her help. She's been a big participant behind the scenes, so thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And Cappy and I want to thank you all for your cooperation and for Trent for inviting us and making it work for us, and Albert again for your facilitation. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Okay.
Very inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, we're going to make available to you an evaluation. At some point, I'm working with Letitia on that now. We might be able to get it in the chat. Very similar to the survey that you all received. Please let us know in the chat if you did not receive the survey. It should have been an email to go out, and you can still even complete that. It's very short while we are finishing out the meeting.
Okay, Trent,
yes.
before you move on, make sure you send that to me as soon as it is compiled, because I told EJI that we would share with them the product of this meeting, because they're still very interested in where we are going and looking. I think they're looking to use us as a model for the rest of the country.
Bingo.
Okay.
Bingo. Okay.
So, as soon as you get it, send it to me.
Okay, excellent. We'll send you
Same
survey.
thing with the survey. Yeah.
And good. And the evaluation.
Right.
And segue into the evaluation. Letitia is going to, she created the evaluation. You all be grateful, show love to Letitia. We came
One
up
of
with
my favorite people.
questions. Yes. And she found the technical way to do it and to get it out to us. And she's taken the time to assemble the results. And give that back to us. So we're gonna segue into the mission part of this right now with Letitia telling us what she found out. Letitia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. I was
Okay, I'm
putting all
sorry.
the links in the
Make
chat.
sure.
I had to like get all the links there. So,
Okay.
so let me just say a couple of things. There is a link in the chat to the evaluation. It's now a few chats back, so you'll have to scroll. We will also send that by email after this meeting. I'm assuming that somebody has a list of who's been here and all the email addresses. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, great. So I will send that link after the meeting so that you can look at that there.
With one caveat, Letitia, we got two Bobs here.
Yes, but we know how to reach Sean, so we'll substitute Sean for one of those. So yes, so Thea and Cappy, thank you so much for the workshop. And we're really grateful. The evaluation, we'll share that feedback with you for your ongoing work, and really grateful for that. I've also put in the chat now a link to the survey, which is a survey about priorities for this group going forward. It is still open. We're going to leave the survey open, so you'll have a chance to continue adding information to that survey. What I've done is just compile the feedback that we have so far. And I'm not sure who the host is, but if you can give me screen share privileges, I will share some of the results.
Okay. Albert, do you have to unhost?
Hang on.
Okay.
I'm getting there. Okay.
Okay. While he's doing that, I want to caveat off of what Letitia said to Thea and Cappy. And it's something I wanted to make a point of earlier as another part of this coalition. The contributions that are being made by each of you, if we put a dollar amount on them, what this coalition has done and the work that the people have done would be worth thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. We've got the time, my 3 T's, time, talent, and treasures. And people are contributing their 3 T's at all levels. And to cap that off, Thea and Cappy just doing what they did today, again, out in the world, so to speak, would be worth thousands of dollars. And so again, we want to thank you all for donating that, along with all of this effort to making this happen and helping create this. We're praying that you're able to stay, but we know that Thea and Cappy, they got some other commitments very close to this time, but we want you to stay as long as you can. And I'm going to get to Albert and what his work has been worth in bringing this all together too. But I'm sorry, Letitia, please continue. Thank you all.
Great. So I'm actually going to go through some of this a little bit quickly, just in the interest of time, so that we have some time for discussion. This was a 7-question survey asking about your experience of work with the coalition, your hopes for the future, both for hopes and priorities for the coalition as a whole, and for your involvement in the coalition. We've had 10 responses so far. I expect that'll continue to grow, so we'll add to this. And the survey does remain open. I'm going to summarize the feedback for these questions. So when asked about the most meaningful aspects of your work with the coalition, you can scroll through these here. There were lots of people, I didn't put every single response, but there were lots of people who identified getting to know coalition members, learning about the other organizations and individuals with shared commitments, that this had been a really important part of the coalition. The marker placement the closing or the interfaith service and the closing ceremony, all of those were really important things that people named. We also asked, what coalition activities do you think had the most significant impact in the community? So people lifted up the mission really of the coalition as a whole, raising awareness of racial injustice and racial violence, recognition of victims of lynching, and honoring their survivors. The specific activities that people mentioned were pretty uniform actually across all of the responses, working with EJI to get the historical markers in place, the historical marker dedication events, the interfaith celebration, and the closing ceremony. Those were the highlights of what people thought were the most significant impacts. We also asked what kinds of initiatives have already grown out of the coalition's work. And people mentioned a range of things, including sometimes their own work that they've been doing as individuals or in communities beyond the coalition, as well as a general increased awareness in the community and what that meant for the community. Okay, then we asked, what do you think the priorities of the coalition should be in the next 1 to 2 years? And there were a bunch of options that were listed, and people ranked those, agree, strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree, and neutral. And then there was a space for people to make other suggestions. So these are the top vote getters essentially in the poll. The top priorities that people named, and I've indicated, what the feedback was. So continue working with EJI to have the memorial monument transferred to DeKalb County. Plan for annual events to raise awareness about the history that the historical markers preserve. Support the network of racial justice practitioners and organizations that are already present in our community. Help to develop, implement, or support public school curriculum that includes teaching about histories of racial terrorism in the region. And support community reconciliation through public events, workshops, and trainings provided by resources inside and outside the coalition. So those were the top 5 sort of things that people named. I will say that across all of the ideas that were specified in this survey, there was strong support. So, all of the things that were mentioned got positive feedback from the group of people who took the survey. So then we asked what things were people personally interested in being involved in or in leading in the next 1 to 2 years. And these were the initiatives that had 3 or more people who said they want to be actively involved in the work. And you'll see here that there's some overlap, a good bit of overlap with the priorities that people named in the prior question. There were some additional things. So developing a walking, driving, or virtual tour of the monument historical markers. That was one that had 4 people said they wanted to work on. And further actions on and research on race-related matters of interest to organizations in the coalition was another one that got several votes. Before I turn this over to discussion, I do want to just give you a snapshot of the other suggestions that people offered that weren't part of the 8 or so priorities or initiatives that were listed. And I will say, depending on what kind of screen you're looking at, the text here may be very, very small. So I apologize for that. I'll send this out at the end of the meeting as well. Can people read these on the screen? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Yes.
So there, you can see there are a range of things. Sometimes like expanding to do additional research. There may be additional histories that would fit into the historical marker work and the work of EJI. Developing an online presence to make the coalition more visible, kind of public proclamations to help raise the visibility of this history. Here's some more suggestions. People had lots of suggestions, which was wonderful. So a proclamation from public officials, somebody recommend working with PTA and PTO organizations at schools, perhaps as a way to, circumvent the political environment, which might make getting a curriculum officially passed difficult. Somebody mentioned reparations, and then there were a couple of comments about either collaborating with other coalitions doing this kind of work, and also sharing the work that we've done with other counties. And then finally, we asked a question about what your hopes are going forward for the coalition. So I'll just let you read through these. The range, again, I didn't put every single response, but the range of responses really was very concretely focused on the work of the coalition, to also thinking about the individual's own role and how people were taking the work and the learning from this work into their own lives and their own institutions and communities in different ways. So that's the summary of the feedback. If you have not completed the survey, I will again put a link in the chat, and we will send it out after the meeting as well. If there's other folks who've been involved in this work who you know of, please pass it on to them as well.
And Letitia, did you say that the evaluation link is in the survey, is in the chat as well?
It is, yes.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so much.
And let me know if you want me to put any of that back up. I can do that.
Okay. We may do that. I'm sharing the continuation here. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good. This is, again, our second goal here. Building. So Bob and Letitia and I talked about this fairly extensively beforehand. Tried to sort of anticipate how we could frame a means of ending this retreat with a few key decisions and some steps moving forward. A goal being that, again, we all have ownership to what this coalition does moving forward. On the one extreme, and Dee mentioned earlier about EJI interested in the model, and that is real, because we're personally aware of some organizations that after they completed the marker mission, they dissolved. That was the end of the coalition. And so over our last several meetings, we had determined at least that we did not want this coalition to resolve, that all of the goodwill, all of the work, all of what has been built, it was almost unanimous that we did not want to see that go away. So what do we do with that? And that was the purpose of the survey. So we're framing our next steps in this way. What is our mission moving forward? What is the mission of the coalition moving forward? And a couple of concepts that we came up with was a continuity, which involves continuing the work that we started, and also expandability, because as we saw in the survey, that there are many related missions, many related possibilities, many related projects that could be taken on. So we wanted a mission framework and a mission statement that gave us the room to grow and was not restrictive. It gave us a focus, but is not restrictive. And that is the expandability, and then the repeatability, which speaks to what Dee mentioned, which I wholeheartedly believe with, having seen the work of many of these coalitions across the country, that I believe we have an opportunity here to create a model that is repeatable. So with that in mind, we just gave 2 points to what could be the beginning of a refreshed mission statement for the coalition, and the 2 elements of that to be worked on and determined, which would be part of our next steps. I'm going to cheat and go ahead a little bit and say a part of our next steps will be forming a committee to, if this group agrees, a committee to relook at our mission statement, is that the DCRP will continue this work, this remembrance work, in conjunction with EJI and other initiatives in the greater DeKalb County. Okay, that will continue the work that we've begun. And number 2, that will remain expandable, and that we give ourselves the ability to take on other related remembrance, restorative justice, and truth and reconciliation projects in the county. Okay.
Brent?
Yes.
I need to put a hold on that because you're crossing into some other territory that will have to be clear with our executive committee.
Okay.
Okay, especially when you're talking about going into other jurisdictions. I realize you guys are not aware of that, but we've been working closely with jurisdictions who've asked for our assistance. But to put it in our mission statement is a completely different animal, and we may be asking for trouble there. In other words, politics plays a part in everything.
Absolutely.
Okay, we will continue. Let me just bring you up to date. We will continue to work with EJI on bringing the memorial home, but I need everybody to realize that is in EJI's court.
Sure.
We have asked for the memorial. We have even offered to make and pay for ourselves a replica of the memorial. And I think I shared with you their last email about that. Now on repeatability, we're working on that right now. Al and I have something in the works that should take care of that. Presenting a model for other people to start. So that's easily, so with repeatability and continuity, no problem. Expandability, just leave it out of the mission statement because it creates too many problems. It creates more problems than it solves.
Okay, so, okay, I hear you 100%. So this is terminology. You notice I didn't say mission statement because that definitely needs to be worked with the committee to address everything that you just mentioned. So these are just concepts to work with, to give that committee something to work with. And all of those adjustments definitely can be made. But the key reason for even putting this out there is to give a framework to what we just covered in the survey, that these are the specific projects that were asked about in the survey, and that we have been considering or having in front of us for the last 2 or 3 meetings or so. And so one of the things that we can come away with today is an overall decision to move forward or to put these in a planning stage for moving forward on. And again, the results just kind of gave us a framework for these. And for instance, you just mentioned continuing the work with the EJI to have the memorial monument transferred. So that might translate, for instance, into a committee of just a few people who just monitor that situation and just stay, in touch. Also, to make sure to monitor the legislature, to make sure nobody gets in there and tries to undo any approvals that have been done, or try to come up tomorrow or next month or next year and put something else in the place that they've already agreed to. Whatever the cases may be, that will be a part of just our projects, our mission statement, annual recognition, further research, developing materials for walking and driving, and to continue the reconciliation sessions and the process to include expanding into understanding other practitioners and relating with other practitioners. So our sense is that these could be the pillars, if you will, the pillars of purpose, the strategic projects that are kind of core to the continuity part. This is a continuity of what the coalition is already doing. And we could leave here today with a general agreement that these projects make sense. Let's put those in our mission hat, and then we can further, again, develop by committee what a mission statement looks like that is inclusive of these projects. And the
Let's wait until we get more coalition members involved. I think it's a little bit too premature, especially, I know you ignored it, but especially what I just said. We don't need to set any committees today. We will have other meetings in the future where we can consider this, okay?
Okay, all right. All right, okay. The other piece, and when we talk about expansion, again, well, we're not necessarily talking jurisdictionally, but in terms of just the other potential projects that the coalition can carry forward. And those are listed here. Those were also on the survey. So again, when we talk about expansion, we're just talking about not being limited to just one or two projects, but other things, again, like conducting further research on related matters, et cetera. So going to the final point, and D, we again, wanting to come out of this, the goal for this, again, was to come out with some sense of agreement on what the coalition does moving forward. So as far as committee formation, we can't do that today. All right. As far as anything beyond agreeing to, well, let's work on further committees, which I'm taking what you just said as the recommendation that we have subsequent meetings, which is the last recommendation here for next steps, to conduct at least one or two more meetings before the end of the year to further work the organization of this. So there are a lot of things that cannot be addressed in this period of time. All of the things that you mentioned, Dee, are technical things that have to be addressed. Can't do that today. That's not the objective today. But the objective today is to at least say, hey, this is a direction to move forward for further planning before, any mission statements are published or before, any public actions are taken. We just want to come away today with a sense of whether or not these tasks are ones we want to move forward on. And again, one example would be a mission statement committee. We can't develop that today. We can't work on that today, but just an agreement that, okay, in our next meeting, we'll further explore that. So is that understood by everyone? Feedback, discussion on this, please.
So this is Tom. I enjoyed this session very much today, and I was specifically looking for what kinds of initiatives might come out of this and what kind of feedback from the survey might have been provided for us. So I appreciate Letitia's summary of the responses so far. With respect to what we previously talked about on our last coalition meeting, Dee, I did not set up another call with Al and with Rosalind on the education, civic education component, because I was kind of waiting to see how today's retreat went. But it sounds like there's pretty strong opportunity to keep moving forward and possibly some further volunteers. I think the things that we might want to do or look at low-hanging fruit, like we have an excellent documentary. The documentation of our final service was excellent. And also, Dee, your list of activities that our coalition has done over the last 2 to 3 years, these would be great materials to be able to share somehow with the school system, with individual classrooms or teachers somehow, so we can talk further about how that might work, maybe the next time our coalition meets.
You're correct. And the work of your committee, and I'm calling it the Education Committee for lack of a better name, that is something that we've already decided we want to move forward on. And before we set up anything else, we need to make sure we consider all of the projects that we have and that they will be ongoing. All I'm saying is today, Trent, is just, we need a time to digest what we have learned here today. And Letitia, if you'll send me those responses, I'd appreciate it. They were good and they will give us something to go forward on. And Bob, if we could set up a coalition meeting maybe a month from now, or give everybody time to digest what they have heard and come back, and maybe by then we can, because we only have about 5 or 10 minutes left. Maybe then we can suggest, be in a better position to think about what type of projects we want to go forward on. And everybody, please remember that our theme is journey from remembrance to reconciliation. So we've really got to focus on that reconciliation piece, and all of our projects should be geared to that in some way or form. I think the Education Committee, from what they have done so far, has been an excellent step in moving in that direction. And some of the things we've learned here today would be excellent in moving in that direction. I just don't want to see us rush into anything today. So if everybody can take everything home, digest it, think about it, and when we come back together, then we'll be in a better position to discuss them and decide what we want to do next.
Okay, so then we can put as our outcome for this planning session then that we will further meet this last piece here and discuss this further.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we've come up with some great suggestions, and I love what Letitia did a great job. She's still one of my favorite girls. Okay. She has done a great job in putting the survey responses together. And when we get more and people respond, I think we'll get even more ideas and something to think about.
Okay, excellent. Any other comments in our last 5, 6, 7 minutes? Because we wanted this to be participative. The leaders, you all have been leaders and present. Any other comments?
I just put the link to the survey in the chat, and I'm about to put the link to the evaluation form there again so that you can see it at the bottom of your chats. And if you haven't done one of those, they should each take no more than about 5 minutes. I mean, you could take longer if you really want to think about it, but I just want you to have the links right there. So if you haven't had a chance to do that if you could take just a few minutes today to do that, that would be fantastic.
Okay, and would it be best, because I don't know, I think the chat will be saved, but I don't know if we're individually able to save it. Should we just cut and paste those links, Letitia, and outside of
I would say, yeah,
Outside the Zoom.
either cut and paste or just go ahead and open the survey on your computer or device if you have it, if that's the type of device you're on. And then Al has been collecting the names of participants, so you should also get an email. But if you want to go ahead and do it, that's also great.
Got you. Okay, I have just opened both in another window, so no matter what, have them there.
Do that.
Okay, wonderful,
that.
wonderful. And so there's just left on the agenda prayer. And Dee, did you, as our fearless leader, wanted to also take a moment and acknowledge Dee's leadership? And this is a part of this is kind of a culmination of mission complete, you know, initial mission complete, and a with the reconciliation, reinforcing who we are, what we've done, and establishing a foundation for us to move forward. So with both of those things in mind, can we give Dee a hand for all that she's done? Yes. And all that
Thank you. I'm
she's
trying
doing.
to get this.
All right.